He was born on March 14, 1879, in the small city of Ulm in the Kingdom of Württemberg, part of the German Empire. There were no comets in the sky, no earthquakes, no wise men knocking on the door, just a pale boy with a large head, born to a middle-class Jewish family. His parents named him Albert. His father, Hermann Einstein, was an engineer. He co-owned a small company that made electrical equipment. His mother, Pauline Koch, was a quiet woman who loved music. She played piano and wanted her son to do the same. But Albert didn't seem interested in anything typical. He didn't talk until he was 3, and even when he started, he spoke slowly, carefully, almost like he was editing every word in his head before saying it. Some believed he was mentally challenged. Others said he was just stubborn. In truth, no one really knew. But something was going on in that head of his. One day, when Albert was 5, his father gave him a simple magnetic compass. Nothing flashy, just a small tool to pass the time. But for Albert, it was more than a toy. It was a question. Why does the needle always point north? No one was touching it. Nothing visible was moving it. He stared at it for hours, days. That compass shook him. In his own words years later, he said it left him with a deep impression, the idea that something unseen was affecting the world. That idea never left him. Einstein wasn't a bad student, but he didn't love school. He hated rules, he hated obedience, and he hated memorizing things. The teachers in Germany, especially at the Luitpold Gymnasium in Munich, didn't appreciate that attitude. They expected discipline, silence, and order. Einstein gave them questions, arguments, long silences, and sometimes refusal. At school, he was called a dreamer. Some teachers even told him directly that he would never succeed in life. In fairness, he wasn't great at languages. He wasn't interested in religion or nationalism either, but he was curious. Quietly, constantly curious. He loved mathematics, he loved geometry. He read Euclid's Elements, an ancient Greek math book, and called it his holy little geometry book. By the time Einstein was a teenager, his family was struggling financially. Hermann's electrical company wasn't doing well, so in 1894, the family moved to Italy, hoping for a better chance in Milan. But Albert stayed behind in Munich to finish school. It didn't last long. At just 15 years old, he dropped out. He left school without telling anyone and went to join his family in Milan. He told the German authorities he had nervous exhaustion and couldn't continue school. In truth, he was tired of rules and Germany. He renounced his German citizenship shortly after. He didn't want to be part of an empire he didn't believe in. After some time in Milan, Einstein decided he needed to get back on track. He wanted to go to college, but without a high school diploma, that wasn't easy. He applied to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic Institute in Zurich in 1895. It was one of the best technical universities in Europe. He was 16 years old, 2 years younger than the usual applicants. He failed the entrance exam. Well, not completely. He scored high in math and physics, but did terribly in other subjects like French, chemistry, and biology. The examiners saw potential, though. They told him to go finish high school in Aarau, a small town in Switzerland, and come back next year. That year in Aarau changed him. The school was liberal, open-minded. The teachers encouraged critical thinking. Here, Einstein thrived. He read about Maxwell's equations, the foundation of electromagnetism. He imagined riding alongside a beam of light at the speed of light, wondering what he would see. That thought became the seed for one of the most important ideas in physics. In 1896, he graduated from Aarau, passed the Polytechnic entrance exam, and enrolled at the Zurich Polytechnic. That same year, at just 17, he officially gave up his German citizenship, becoming stateless. No country, no army, no borders. Just Einstein, a man with a notebook and too many questions. At the Polytechnic, Einstein studied to become a teacher in physics and mathematics. His professors included Heinrich Weber and Jean Pernet, but Einstein didn't get along with most of them. He often skipped classes and studied on his own. He preferred reading scientific papers alone, in libraries, in cafes, at home. He read Kirchhoff, Helmholtz, Boltzmann, and most of all, James Clerk Maxwell, the man who united electricity, magnetism, and light. Einstein called Maxwell's work the most profound and the most fruitful theory in physics. During these years, Einstein met Mileva Maric, a Serbian physics student. She was the only woman in his class. They studied together, debated, laughed, and eventually fell in love. Their relationship was intense, intellectual, and eventually tragic. But at this point, it was full of hope. They exchanged letters filled with equations and affection. In 1901, Einstein graduated, though not at the top of his class. His attitude towards authority and some of his professors hurt his chances at getting a proper job, and things were about to get harder. Reverted Einstein wanted to work in academia. He applied to assistant professor positions, but was rejected again and again. He even tried to get work as a high school teacher. Still nothing. He wrote letters to his old professors, asking for help. Most ignored him. By 1902, Albert Einstein was working as a technical assistant at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. Not as a physicist, not as a professor, just a clerk, reviewing applications for electrical devices. He got the job through Marcel Grossman's father. Marcel was an old school friend, and his family had connections. Einstein was grateful. It paid the bills. It gave him stability. And most importantly, it gave him time to think. In between reviewing inventions, he scribbled equations on the margins of his paperwork. The job was boring, but it was a hidden blessing. Einstein later said it helped him sharpen his thinking. He learned to explain complicated devices in clear, simple language, a skill that would define his writing style. During this period, Einstein formed a small intellectual group with two friends, Maurice Solovine and Konrad Habicht. They called it the Olympia Academy. They read philosophy, physics, and mathematics together. They debated Spinoza, Mach, Poincaré, and Hume. Einstein wasn't part of any university at the time, but in this small, quiet circle, he developed the ideas that would later change the world. Meanwhile, his personal life was messy. In 1902, Einstein and Mileva Maric had their first child, a daughter named Liesel. No one knows what happened to her. She was born in Serbia while Einstein was in Switzerland. Some sources suggest she died of illness. Others say she was given up for adoption. Einstein never mentioned her publicly again. In 1903, he married Mileva. It wasn't a happy marriage, but it was functional, for a while. They would later have two sons, Hans Albert, born 1904, and Eduard, born 1910. But behind the scenes, the relationship was strained. Einstein was distant. Mileva struggled with depression. Their letters became colder over time. Still, during these difficult years, Einstein's mind was working at full speed. 1905 is known in science as Einstein's Annus Mirabilis, his miracle year. While still working full-time at the patent office, he published 4 papers in the Annalen der Physik journal. All in 1 year, all while no one knew who he was. Each one would eventually become a pillar of modern physics. Let's break them down, simply. Paper 1, The Photoelectric Effect, published in March 1905. Einstein proposed that light is made of tiny packets, which we now call photons. This idea helped explain how light knocks electrons off metal surfaces, something classical physics couldn't explain. This paper would later earn him the Nobel Prize in 1921. Not relativity, not E equals mc squared, but this paper about light. Why? because it had immediate practical use in new technologies. It was experimental, not just theoretical. Paper 2, Brownian Motion, published in May 1905. Einstein explained how tiny particles suspended in water move in a jittery random way, something called Brownian motion. He proved that this motion was due to invisible molecules hitting the particles, solid evidence for the existence of atoms. At that time, some scientists still thought atoms were a theory. Einstein helped prove they were real. Paper 3, Special Relativity, published in June 1905. This is the paper that made Einstein. He proposed that time and space are not absolute. They change depending on your speed. Two main ideas. The laws of physics are the same for all observers, no matter how fast they're moving, as long as they're not accelerating. The speed of light is always the same, no matter how fast you're moving. From these two rules, a lot of strange consequences follow. Time slows down as you go faster. Length contracts at high speeds. Simultaneity is relative. Two people can disagree on whether two events happened at the same time. Einstein showed that space and time are linked, part of a single thing, space-time. This shattered the foundations of classical physics. Paper 4, Mass-Energy Equivalence, published in September 1905. This one had a simple result. E equals mc squared. Energy and mass are not different things. They're two forms of the same thing. A small amount of mass can be converted into a large amount of energy, and vice versa. This equation became famous. Misused. Quoted on T-shirts and posters. But in 1905 it was just a quiet line in a paper few people read. Despite the brilliance of his 1905 papers, Einstein didn't become famous overnight. He was still a clerk at the patent office. He tried to get a teaching position, again, but faced rejection after rejection. Why? He had no doctoral advisor to promote him. He was a political outsider, no German citizenship. He was Jewish in an anti-Semitic academic culture, and he challenged the existing order. In 1907, he finally got a part-time lecturing job at the University of Bern. Not a full professorship, just small lectures. Some of his students walked out. They thought his ideas were nonsense, but a few, very few, paid attention. 1909, people started noticing. Physicists like Max Planck, one of the most respected scientists of the time, began to support Einstein's work. Planck invited him to speak in Berlin. That gave Einstein some credibility. In 1909, he left the patent office. After 7 years, he became a full professor at the University of Zurich. No more clerking, just physics. While his professional life was finally rising, Einstein's personal life was getting colder. His marriage to Mileva was deteriorating. They had 2 sons now, but Einstein was emotionally distant, focused entirely on his work. He could be harsh, dismissive, impatient. He once gave Mileva a written list of conditions she had to follow if they were to stay married. Things like, "You will not expect affection from me. You will stop talking to me if I request it. You will leave my study when I say so." Not exactly romantic. They lived under the same roof, but not in the same world. By 1910, Albert Einstein was no longer a clerk, he was a professor. He had moved to the German-speaking University of Prague, becoming a full professor of theoretical physics. It was the first time he held a position in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He didn't love the city. He found it cold and unfriendly, but he kept working. More importantly, he kept thinking. He had already changed physics once, but he wasn't finished. Einstein had a question that wouldn't go away. What exactly is gravity? Newton had given the world a working model. Masses attract each other through a force, but he never explained why. Einstein thought that explanation was incomplete, so he started from scratch. He asked, what if gravity isn't a force at all? What if it's the result of space itself being curved by mass? He called this idea general relativity, and it would take him 8 years to develop. In 1912, Einstein returned to Zurich, this time at the ETH, Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, his alma mater. He resumed teaching, but he was focused more than ever on one goal, finishing general relativity. He worked with Marcel Grossmann, an old friend and a skilled mathematician, to understand the geometry of curved space. Together, They explored tensor calculus and Riemannian geometry, complex mathematical tools. Einstein struggled. He made mistakes. He gave up more than once, but he always returned. Then, in 1914, he got the offer of a lifetime. A research position at the Prussian Academy of Sciences in Berlin, with no teaching obligations. It also came with a professorship at the University of Berlin. It was prestigious, well paid, and it came with something else: the chance to finally be at the center of the scientific world. Einstein accepted. He moved to Berlin in March 1914, but his family didn't. Mileva Maric and the two children stayed behind in Zurich. Einstein didn't beg them to come. In fact, he didn't seem to care much. The marriage was collapsing fast. In July 1914, World War I broke out. Germany went to war. Europe was burning. Einstein hated war, hated nationalism, hated the blind obedience to flags and empires. Most German scientists signed a document supporting the war. Einstein refused. Instead, he signed a counter-manifest, calling for peace. Only 4 scientists signed it. The others turned their backs on him. Einstein became more isolated, scientifically and personally. By 1916, Einstein and Mileva were separated. The divorce became official in 1919. In a strange twist, Einstein promised Mileva that if he ever won the Nobel Prize, he'd give her the money. She agreed. Einstein soon entered a relationship with Elsa Lowenthal, his cousin. They got married in 1919, just after the divorce. Their relationship was less intellectual than with Mileva. Elsa wasn't a scientist, but she was patient, supportive, and protective. She managed his appointments, his visitors, his mail. Einstein once said, "She kept people from taking pieces of me." In November 1915, after years of struggle, false starts and revisions, Einstein presented his final theory of general relativity to the Prussian Academy. It was elegant. It was strange. It was revolutionary. He proposed that mass and energy curve space and time, and that objects move along paths determined by this curvature. Gravity was no longer a force, it was geometry. There's a rule in science: a good theory must make a testable prediction. Einstein's theory predicted something big. Light should bend when it passes near a massive object, like the sun. The effect would be small but measurable, during a total solar eclipse. In 1919, British astronomer Sir Arthur Eddington led an expedition to test Einstein's prediction. He travelled to the island of Principe, off the west coast of Africa. On May 29, 1919, during a total eclipse, Eddington's team observed that the stars near the sun appeared slightly out of place, just as Einstein predicted. The results were announced later that year. The headlines were explosive. Einstein's theory triumphs. Lights all askew in the heavens. Revolution in science. Einstein became famous. Not just in science, everywhere. He was on the front page of newspapers across Europe and America. It was the first time most people heard his name, and it wouldn't be the last. In a world still recovering from war, Einstein was a symbol of something else: genius, peace, and a new way of seeing the universe. He didn't ask for the fame, but he didn't reject it either. Like a typical scientist, he had messy hair, baggy clothes, a strange smile. He didn't like suits. He didn't like formal dinners. He didn't even like socks. The press loved him. He was eccentric, unpredictable, and brilliant. He became a cultural icon, someone who symbolized intelligence itself. But fame had its costs. People wanted his time, his opinions, his face, his endorsement. He was offered awards, money, honorary degrees, some of which he refused. Others he accepted to fund his research and support his family. In 1921, Einstein finally received the Nobel Prize in physics, but not for relativity. The Nobel Committee gave it to him for his work on the photoelectric effect, the theory that light comes in packets, photons, and knocks electrons from metal. It was practical, proven by experiment, safer than awarding him for a theory many physicists still didn't fully understand. Einstein accepted it. He donated most of the money to Mileva Maric, his ex-wife, just as he had promised in their divorce agreement. After the prize, Einstein went on a world tour. From 1921 to 1923, he visited the United States, the UK, France, Japan, Palestine, and more. In Japan, he was treated like royalty. Thousands lined the streets. Schools closed just to catch a glimpse of him. In the US, he lectured at universities and met with President Warren G. Harding. In Jerusalem, he supported the creation of the Hebrew University, which he saw as a cultural and scientific home for the Jewish people. He didn't speak much during ceremonies, but when he did, it was brief and sharp. "I speak to you not as a Zionist, but as a Jew," he said. In Germany, things were getting dangerous. The country was in political and economic chaos after World War I. Hyperinflation, extremism, assassinations. Einstein, a Jewish pacifist who spoke out against nationalism, became a target. In 1922, Walter Rathenau, Germany's Jewish foreign minister, was murdered by right-wing extremists. Einstein received death threats. He started traveling with bodyguards. He kept a suitcase packed in case he had to flee. He didn't stop speaking out. By the late 1920s, Einstein faced growing opposition from conservative academics, nationalists, and Nazi sympathizers. A German pamphlet titled 100 Authors Against Einstein attempted to discredit his theories. He replied calmly, "If I were wrong, one author would be enough." But the hate didn't stop. In 1933, Adolf Hitler came to power. Einstein was in California when it happened. He never went back to Germany. The Nazis raided his home, confiscated his property, put a price on his head. His books were burned. He was called a traitor. Einstein resigned from all German academic posts. He renounced his German citizenship. Again, he moved to the United States. He spent the rest of his life there, thinking, writing, walking. He wore the same clothes every day, refused socks, played the violin, talked to children more than politicians. He rarely published anything groundbreaking after general relativity, but he kept searching for something bigger, a unified field theory. He wanted to unify gravity and electromagnetism. He never succeeded. In 1939, Einstein signed a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The letter warned that Nazi Germany might be working on a powerful new weapon, an atomic bomb. Einstein didn't build the bomb. He wasn't part of the Manhattan Project, but his equation, E=mc², made it possible. After the war, he regretted the letter deeply. He became an outspoken critic of nuclear weapons. The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything, except our way of thinking. He spent years calling for disarmament and global peace. After World War II, Einstein became a symbol of science, of rebellion, of intellect. But he was also lonely. His wife Elsa had died in 1936. His sons were distant. His fame never gave him peace. He turned down offers to become the president of Israel in 1952. "I know a little about science," he said, "but nothing about human beings." He supported civil rights, speaking out against racism in America. He admired Martin Luther King Jr. He called racism America's worst disease. In April 1955, Einstein collapsed from an abdominal aneurysm. Doctors suggested surgery. He refused. "It is tasteless to prolong life artificially," he said. "I have done my share." He died on April 18, 1955, at the age of 76. His brain was removed during autopsy without his family's consent and preserved for study. Controversial, fitting. The man who gave the world the idea that time bends was now out of time. Einstein didn't build machines. He didn't start companies. He didn't run labs. But he changed how we think. He showed that time slows down, light is strange, and mass is energy. He stood against war, nationalism, racism, and hatred. He was flawed, distant, often cold, but he was honest, curious, and free. If this journey through his life made you think a little deeper, or wonder a little longer, then the story did its job. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this kind of honest, story-driven history, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing. And remember, the greatest minds don't always give answers. Sometimes they just ask better questions.